our view was to build a portfolio of what we think are all the major projects in Japan, and then have all of those 30 projects advanced.
I'm trying to work out what kind of company you are. Have you invested any of that $26 million in the ground and created incremental value for the company? Or are you saying asset value is pretty much the bulk of the spend so far? So if I'm a shareholder, I'm trying to work out what have you done? What have you done? Hello and welcome to Crux Investor. First of all, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like it, please give us a thumbs up, be much appreciated. And do leave your comments below. It helps us understand the sorts of questions you think we should be asking, how you think we're doing, and of course, what you think of the company. You can also listen to this as a podcast. You can read about it on cruxinvestor.com as an article or a transcript. And of course, for the Crux Club members, you've also got early access of this video. And if you haven't already done so, please click the button in the corner of the screen to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And of course, for more videos like this, click the notification bell. We spoke earlier today to John Proust, CEO of Japan Gold. Fairly big story, this one, and quite complex. Basically, going since 2012, John's managed to put together 30 licensed areas looking for gold in Japan. 28 of those licensed areas they've just done a strategic alliance with Barrick for. Barrick are obliged to look at those over the next 2 years, spending $5 million the first year to work at if they want to advance any of those projects. We suspect they will. Japan Gold's also, on the remaining 2 projects, done a joint venture agreement with Newmont. Not quite sure what the terms are there. It's been a while in the making. It's quite complicated. The company has recently raised about $8.5 million with which to meet its side of the bargain in terms of developing the 2 projects with Newmont. They have spent prior to that $26.5 million on various activities. He explains what, we question why, and where the value is. It's a $49 million market cap company. I think some shareholders are disappointed with the story so far, but John assures us big things to come, and they are going to start promoting this story into the marketplace. So take a look at some of the topics we discuss at great length in the description below. Anything interests you in particular, click on the number beside that topic. That's called a timestamp, and that jumps you to that part of the video. Enjoy what John has to say. Hey John, how are you doing, sir?
I am great, thanks. Good day to you, Matthew.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us. You're in, you're back home, I guess, in Vancouver. So that's something. But we're going to hear all about your story, which is based in Japan. So why don't you kick off, give us that one minute elevator pitch, and we'll pick it up from there.
Well, Matthew, Japan Gold is a junior gold explorer that's focused solely on Japan and solely on the exploration for gold. We are the first company to enter Japan since a 2012 change in the mining law, which allowed for the first time in Japan's history foreign companies to come in and wholly own prospecting rights or wholly hold prospecting rights or mining rights or own mines. And this was based again on the change of the mining law that had occurred based on an economic diversification in Japan, where the country wanted to stimulate rural economies, and they felt that mining was a very important way to do that.
Beautiful. Okay, look, appreciate that. But look, before we kind of get into which I think the big elephant in the room for you guys, which is your relationship with Barrick and how that's constructed, I'm interested in understanding where this started from, where your story started from, because it's new to us, where it started from, what you set out to try to build, and has that changed to this point today, and then we'll kind of get into where you're going later on in the conversation. So start with that.
When we went to Japan, we entered as soon as the mining law changed. We were the first company in the world to go there, and the first thing that we did was we studied the whole country of Japan and those 64 closed mines. The Hishikai gold mine is a low sulfidation epithermal gold mine, so it's a series of quartz veins that are about 1 meter to 4 meters wide, and there are these wonderful, beautiful quartz veins that have gold and alluvium running through them. And so we wanted to see those types of mines. We were able to get our access to the full Japanese government database, and that government database was very robust. It was very full and very informative. And so we studied that for 2 years. And also through that period of time, the government was just starting to, through the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, starting to come up with the idea of what the permitting process would look like. And so we were very fortunate as the first movers and the only party in the country to give good feedback on how to build a globally competitive permitting process. And so the government was kind enough to adopt a number of our key suggestions. And so at the end of 2 years, we knew the country very well. We knew the historic mines that were very interesting to us. And then we also had one of the best permitting systems in the world. So away we went, we put our running shoes on, and we went from there. And where we've culminated today is we have 30 projects across Japan on the 3 main islands of the country. And those 30 projects cover 42 of the 64 closed gold mines that have never reopened.
Right. Still haven't answered the question, which is, what did you as a business set out to do? You told me what you've done in terms of spending 2 years analyzing data, but what was the idea? What did you set out to do?
Well, look, our goal was basically, here was in our mind a brand new destination that had not been open to the world and where the Japanese weren't picking it up or active in it. So, we're in one of the best geological settings in the world. You're in the Ring of Fire. You've got tectonic movement, there's volcanism, there's everything that you possibly want there, and a rich history of gold mining. So it's just, and you're in a geopolitically safe jurisdiction, which absolutely has to come to the top of the list. So, you've got infrastructure, you're in a geopolitically safe jurisdiction. So our goal was to try and go in initially, just understand the country and identify what opportunities were there. As we went along, we noticed that there wasn't other competition coming with us. And that's really because the government hadn't publicized this opportunity very much, because they weren't organized yet. They hadn't got their permitting system organized. So they weren't rushing at this. But we rushed and we moved as quickly as we could to get that first mover advantage. So our goal really, as soon as we saw this opportunity, I'd never seen anything like it in my whole career. And I've been all over the world. And so I said, look, we're going to, as I say, get our running shoes on. We're going to keep the cone of silence down. We're not going to alert competitors to come here. And we're going to try and acquire as much of the key areas in Japan as absolutely possible. And that's exactly what we did.
Okay, so you've basically, you don't have to find anything because you're going into old mines. They've been identified. You know exactly where it is. You've got a lot of data on it. And you're saying, right, if we get these tied up, we think we're going to be able to get into production ourselves. But it's a lot of, because looking at I think page 6 of your presentation, there's, as you say, there's a lot of mines, a lot of land, and that also means a lot of liabilities, a lot of money, and you had to come up with a solution as to the way you were going to be able to finance this, right?
Yeah. So let me just correct a couple of things there.
Sure.
So first of all, we don't go into any of the mines. All the mines have been closed and remediated. So
right.
So we were purely using those as markers. Back to the old adage, the best place to find a mine is, next to or underneath or whatever, an old mine. So that's the best place to find a new gold mine. So we wanted to use those as the best indication of where people have been, recognizing that they've been shut down because of the government intervention, not because they'd run out of ore. So that was something very, very important for us to focus on. Also, what we wanted to do in Japan is we wanted to build an operational group in Japan. So we didn't want to be sort of a foreign company where you see certain juniors that they just tie up with a local major and they get them to do all the work, et cetera, et cetera. So some people say, well, are you a project originator? Are you a project generator? Well, of course we are. We're the first company in the world to go there. So we're going to generate a series of projects. But we wanted to go much farther. So I identified and hired any Japanese geologists, which were frankly scarce as hen's teeth, but we hired Japanese geologists, and one specifically very senior individual, Takashi Kuriyama, who had been the head of global exploration for Sumitomo Metal Mining until he retired in 2016. He was also on Tech Resources Board for 10 years, but he's our general manager of exploration in Japan. And prior to his senior role at Sumitomo Metal Mining, he was the general manager and chief geologist at the Hishikai gold mine, one of the richest gold mines in the world. So we tried to do that. We also brought an expatriate geologist as well to bolster our team. field assistants. And then we got even more aggressive. We bought 4 of our own diamond core drill rigs, imported those into Japan. And then we went and tried to source Japanese drillers at that time. And unfortunately, they were all consumed by the geothermal industry, which is very active in the country. And it is government subsidized. So we ultimately had to work with the government to build a team of 22, a drilling division of 22 people that were from outside Japan and get 3-year visas so they could come in and operate our equipment for us. So we became very operational. As that went on, the major mining companies around the world were starting to find out that Japan was open for business and starting to have a look at the country. And as they were doing that, they then started to look at who was there, and we were the company that was there, and we had picked up pretty much all the key areas in the country, in the key gold provinces that had been historically active. So they realized that if they wanted to do something in country, they had to come through us. That ended up in a whole series of confidentiality agreements with many majors and mid-tier producers. I think we did 15 field or site visits. And all of a sudden people were pouring into Japan and seeing this wonderful geology. And it's really grown from there.
Okay, thanks for clearing that up. That's helpful. So, and we do want to talk about Barrick in a second, but you've talked about putting together an operational team. You're talking about buying rigs and so forth. So how much money have you raised to date, for instance?
Yeah, we've raised $35 million to date.
Right.
And that includes financing a significantly oversold financing that we just closed last week.
Yeah, saw that.
And this ties into the Barrick discussion, so I can talk a little bit about more about that in a moment, but because I don't want to get ahead of myself. But yes, we've raised $35 million.
Great. So the bit I'm confused about, your market cap's about 48. Let's say $50 million today. You've raised 35. You've got Barrick as a JV partner. Mm-hmm. You've got all this land bank tied up. People are not looking at you as a great investment, it seems. So where do you think the disjoint is? Because you're sitting on land banks. To me, I look at that as a liability because I know I'm going to have to spend money to create value there, okay? And I'm not quite sure how the market is viewing, but what do you see the problem as being?
Sure. Well, first of all, just to make sure we were really clear on how much it costs to hold the land we have in Japan, because I think that's always a good point to start at. So currently we have approximately 2,000 square kilometers in Japan across our 30 projects. Mm-hmm. And our annual carrying costs, because remember, we help design the permitting process in the country. So our annual carrying cost for that area is currently just under $40,000 US. Okay. So to put that in perspective, I think where the value disconnect is, and there's a good comparable in the market because there's another company that came into Japan 4.5 years after we were already established and acquiring projects, is that we haven't gone out and told the world about it. We've been very focused on, keeping our head down, building a portfolio of 30 projects, having, significant discussions with majors, including the alliance that we just completed with Barrick, which was a competitive process with 5 companies competing over a 7-month period. So we wanted to put everything together before we went out and told the world about what we're doing. The other company that's in Japan now, a company called Irving Resources, has been there for some time, really has one feature project, and I believe 6 other smaller projects, some of which have been sort of picked up more recently adjacent to our ground in some areas. But their market capitalization is 3 times ours, or about 3 to 4 times our market capitalization, because they've gone out and they've been very actively, talking about it out in the investment community, newsletters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we haven't really done that. Now is the time for us to actually, tell the story, and that's why I'm really pleased to share this with you today.
So do you think they've followed the right process? Do you think they've got it right and you've got it wrong? Should you have been promoting this sooner? Would your shareholders say you should have been promoting this sooner? There's
always 2 schools of thought, and certainly what the other group has done is they've picked one project and they've been more active. They've done geophysics, they've done geochemistry, and they've all got some drilling done. And the drilling has shown that there's a gold-bearing system there. Interestingly enough, Matthew, we have one of our major projects which borders their feature project, and we actually sort of surround them on two sides, I guess now, and the ocean's on the third side. That project is part of our Barrick Alliance, and we'll be very active up there starting in July. So there's always two schools of thought about the way to do it. You know, if you're a company and you have one project, well, you do the best with what you've got and you go actively at that. Our view was much bigger, much more significant than that, which was to build a portfolio of what we think are all the major projects in Japan, to have them validated and by majors through joint ventures or strategic alliances, and then have all of those 30 projects advanced. And so we not only have a relationship with Barrick, but Newmont is also a significant shareholder in our company.
Okay, so let's maybe now's the time to talk about Barrick and what the terms of that are, because I'm sitting reading them again, page 5 of your presentation. So, but let's go through that. So you've gone through a 7-month process, competitive tender process. You've selected Barrick, and you've agreed what terms. What are they obliged to do? How much are they obliged to spend?
Right. So the Barrick, it's a countrywide alliance with Barrick for 28 out of our 30 projects. And if Barrick finds anything new, they'll bring it to the alliance. And if we find anything new, we'll bring it to the alliance. Now, we were very fortunate to have very, very good terms with Barrick. And I'll give you a couple of examples. One example is that we have what I call freedom of information. So if there's any news as it relates to the programs that we're putting in place, any results that we're seeing, any interesting developments, we have the ability as the junior company to put that information out and really keep our shareholders informed and coming along with us. So that's really important. The second thing is that they have a very short time frame, a very short window to look at the 20 and evaluate the 28 projects. They have 2 years to evaluate the 28 projects. Now, just to step back a little bit, Barrick, as you may know, is a very streamlined organization under the leadership of Mark Bristow. They've done an extraordinary job at effectively taking out middle management and running by an executive committee that has a direct communication or connection with the mines. So the mine managers communicate directly with basically an executive team of about 5 people. Mark Bristow himself has taken a real active interest in Japan. He's come to Japan, he's been to the Hishikai gold mine, he's seen what a spectacular tier 1 asset that mine is. And the Barrick view is that it could be replicated in Japan. They've done their statistical analysis, they've done their technical analysis, they've done significant due diligence in country, both on the political side and as well as in the field. One of their 5 key executive team members actually lives in Japan and was previously the U.S. Consul General to Japan. So he's married to a Japanese gal, speaks the language, has lived there for many years, etc. So they have a real strong understanding. The way our alliance basically works is they have to evaluate 28 projects solely funded by them over 2 years. And we're the operator going through that process. Either during or at the end of the process, they have several choices. If there's a project or projects they don't want to advance, they don't meet their criteria, those projects are ours, 100%. And all the data that's being collected through the alliance evaluation, we can use that data to bring in third parties or to advance the projects ourselves. If there's projects they want to advance, then basically they don't earn anything until they complete a pre-feasibility study. So they have to complete a pre-feasibility study to earn a 51% interest. And then they have a choice. If they don't want to continue after that, there's a mechanism where control comes to us and we can again bring in third parties or advance the projects ourselves and dilute Barrick. If they want to continue on, they have to complete a bankable feasibility study. And it's not just any old bankable feasibility study, it's called an acceptable bankable feasibility study, which is a higher threshold, a Barrick threshold, which if they complete a bankable feasibility study, then they get to a 75% interest. And that they have to fully carry us through a bankable feasibility study. At that point, either we can discuss with Barrick the financing of how we go forward, or we can go to third parties if there's superior terms there, et cetera. So we think it's a wonderful place for us to be in terms of advancing 28 projects in the country.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, I mean, to get someone like Barrick on board is great. They're looking at a lot of projects all around the world, and to them, money's not such an issue, so they're able to spend the time. I agree with you. 2 years is a relatively short time frame with which they have to decide which of the projects they want to go forward with. I guess their thresholds can be very different from the regular mid-tier or small producer, for sure. So their cutoff will mean, I suspect that. Well, have you got a sense today of what they're going to do within that 2 year time frame to be able to work this out? Because I mean, they're going to have to throw some money at it and get some data to understand what it is that you're sitting on. So, if they any idea of numbers?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, sure. So first of all, I think we should just circling back to your earlier question about the market and valuation, et cetera. When you have 30 projects in a country and you're a junior, people will think about that and they go, that sounds crazy.
Well, that sounds like dilution.
That
sounds like dilution to me. That's what it sounds like.
Exactly. And it only turns the corner when you can actually have your projects validated, not just one or two, but all your projects validated by one or more majors. And they're all of a sudden funding the process. And then there's an aha moment in terms of, okay, now I understand the bigger picture and the process of what Japan Gold is undertaking. So the way that it works initially, and we're thrilled about this as a junior, because of course, as you mentioned, Barrick is taking this at a much bigger level, at how a major company would evaluate a country. And so in order to do that, they're doing large regional programs over the 28 projects. So I'll give you an example. The 28 projects cover about 1,500 square kilometers. And currently we're doing stream sediment analysis and blegging, so looking for bulk leach extractable gold, over all 1,500 square kilometers, all the streams and waterways, in order to get a real understanding of anomalous areas. As part of that large program across the 3 islands, we've also got geophysics. So we're doing gravity across 1,500 square kilometers. So significant data sets that will basically allow Barrick to focus in on areas that they particularly like. We're starting in the southern part of Japan because there's climate considerations. So we've started already in Kyushu, the southern island. And then in July, we'll be moving right up to the northern island to Hokkaido and getting very, very active there on several projects, one of which is very advanced. So also along the way, if we see anything that looks advanced, then I think Barrick is quite interested in pursuing that from a standpoint of getting the drill rigs going. Let's go see what we've got there and let's get right into it. So that's the program. The first year budget is approximately $5 million. And that's underway right now. So that's the first year budget. But Barrick has basically said, look, we're here, as Mark Bristow said, and I love these colloquial sort of terms, but we see that there's an elephant in Japan. We're here to find the next elephant in Japan. We've seen the Hishikai gold mine. What's Barrick going to spend? Barrick is going to spend whatever it takes to fully evaluate 28 projects to the Barrick standard, and they don't want to leave anything behind or be embarrassed, and we don't want them to either. So we're working very, very carefully with them. So we have a joint technical committee of their best and brightest. And we have an executive committee, which includes their top executives. And just last week, their 5 major executives, including Mark Bristow, were on an hour and a half call with us reviewing Japan. So we report once a week. So it's a very tight relationship.
Okay, so I think there's a long answer to the question was, it's $5 million in the initial appraisal evaluation phase as a minimum.
No, that's not right. Sorry, Matthew, not right. That's just in the first year. That's just the first year.
Was a 2 year? Yeah, okay. So you got 2 year. You got a 2 year phase. You mentioned $5 million was the only number I heard. So what's the number of investment?
Yeah, it was just 5 million for the first year. That's just our first year budget that we're working on right now.
I'm reading page 5, initial evaluation phase. Barrick is sole funding a 2-year initial evaluation phase for each project.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So you've given me the number for the first year of that 2-year phase. Is that right? So what's
Matthew, that's exactly right.
So what's the total number for the initial evaluation phase?
We don't know, and Barrick doesn't know until we get those regional data sets, spend our $5 million, and then they see what significant programs next, which could be more infill geophysics, a lot of sampling on the ground, getting the drill spinning. There's a myriad of things that could happen after that in year 2.
Okay. And then the second evaluation phase is a kind of three-year phase with the project that they have selected, which may or may not be 28. It'd probably be less than 28, right?
I'm certain of that. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And so really, we have no idea what that number is going to go from 28 to what number. But what I will say is that we have a significant concentration of projects that are in the most prolific gold province of Japan, which is the southern Kyushu epithermal gold province, which is where the Hishikai gold mine is located. So we fully surround the Hishikai gold mine. And an interesting fact about Japan, if you find a tier 1 gold mine pretty much anywhere in the world, the ground around that's being picked up either by the mine holder or by other interested parties. The ground was open in that gold province around one of the top gold mines in the world. And so we ended up being able to pick up all that ground. But it wasn't just an area play. We actually were fortunate to, again, study all the historic data and start putting together the mapping, the geology, the geophysics, the geochemistry, and looking for settings that were similar to the Hishikai gold mine setting. And we found a number of those. And so those are areas that are part of our Barrick Alliance that we're evaluating.
Okay. We'll come back to Barrick a sec. So I just wanted to pick up something because we segued away from it. You've raised $35 million to date. So $5 million recently in second tranche, and I think $3.5 million prior to that. Is that correct? So $8.5 million in the last couple of months?
In the current finance we just closed, it was $8.5 million in total, of which $1 million was a conversion of a management loan of $1 million because we wanted the company to be debt free. So we raised $7.5 million new dollars and converted $1 million of debt.
Got it. Okay. What was the rest of the money spent on?
So basically that money has gone from 2012 to now to building the knowledge in Japan, fully establishing ourselves in the country, and not only opening up an office in Tokyo, but also buying and operating a base up in northern Japan in Hokkaido, opening up and operating a base in southern Japan in Kyushu, and buying equipment, building our team, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one of the reasons why the majors really like us is that we're fully operational so that they can come into country not having any presence there, and they can bolt on us and we can become the operator for them in Japan and as they need.
Okay, so just tell me, so what do you mean by operational? Just to understand the extent of the infrastructure that you put in place there.
Right. So in northern Japan, to give you an example, in our base up there, we bought 8 hectares of land. We have a large modern house that has offices on the main floor, has accommodations, has kitchens, mess facilities, et cetera, 2 large warehouses, core storage, so infrastructure. 3 of our 4 diamond core drill rigs are stationed up there now. So that's our operational base in northern Japan. In southern Japan, it's a little bit more disparate. We actually have 4 houses in southern Japan. One that's our office, one that's our messing facilities, one that's our accommodation for Japanese staff, and one that's accommodation for non-Japanese. And then we have a large laydown area, core storage shed. One of our diamond core drill rigs is stationed down there. And then in Tokyo, we have an office that we've just moved into our new office recently, and we share that with Barrick.
Okay. And so I'm so intrigued because that's like $26 million or so you've spent since 2012 till the most recent raise. So you bought property, you bought rigs, so you're drilling. Is that you are drilling on, because you talk about there's a couple of projects which Barrick are not taking up. You are retaining those. You're developing those yourself. Is that what you're spending your money on?
Well, so the reason that Barrick we didn't do the alliance on all 30 projects. And this is really important. Back to the chronology. As we were, picking up projects in Japan, and we were doing a whole series of field visits or site visits by major companies around the world, one of the companies that came was Gold Corp. And Gold Corp, the senior vice president in charge of global exploration at that time, had independently, not knowing about us, come up with Japan as a key destination that they would like to go have a look at. And then he went to their CEO at the time, and it just turned out that I had a relationship with the CEO. And he said, well, if you want to go to Japan, you should talk to Proust. So Gold Corp came to Japan, saw what we saw. And so as soon as the plane touched down back in Vancouver, they said, we've got to own a piece of your company. And so Barrick took Gold Corp took a stake in our company. About 2 months later, Newmont called me and said, and we had a confidentiality agreement with Newmont. And they said, look, John, just to let you know, we're making a bid for Barrick. And a number of countries and companies may become casualties in that acquisition, but we want to let you know that Japan and Japan Gold is not one of those. And they said, and to demonstrate that for you, we're actually going to highlight you in our PowerPoint presentation. So they highlighted Japan in the PowerPoint presentation, which was I thought was very gratifying. So the bottom line is, so then Newmont became our shareholder. And along with that, Gold Corp we had agreed with Gold Corp that we would give them the right of first refusal on 2 projects. If we ever wanted to enter into a joint venture, we had to go to them first. And so in order not to confuse things, when we did the Barrick alliance, because again, it was competitive. So I think Newmont was disappointed that they weren't the alliance partner in country, but we honored that relationship by keeping those 2 projects outside of the alliance. And for that, Newmont has been very proactive. So we have a technical committee with Newmont that is very active, in fact, as recently as last night. So they're focused on those 2 projects, and they've provided introductions to third-party contractors. They have a full-time geologist assigned to Japan, and so they have interpreted data for us, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a very close technical relationship with them. Newmont has also taken a small equity stake in the other company that I mentioned that's already in country too. So Newmont really likes Japan as a destination. They see what we see. And so that's why those 2 projects are outside the alliance. And so anyway, so I hope that answers your question.
Kind of. What I'm trying to get at, John, is to try and understand, you spent 26 odd million bucks up until the point Barrick came along and until this recent raise. And I'm trying to work out you bought a bunch of stuff, but was that buildings and rigs and so forth? But you've also inherited a lot of data in there. I'm trying to work out what kind of company you are. Okay, is my problem, because I'm trying to say you're trying to put various deals together. Have you invested any of that 26 million bucks in the ground and created incremental value for the company, or are you saying asset value is pretty much the bulk of the spend so far? So if I'm a shareholder, I'm trying to work out what have you done? What have you done?
So Matthew, okay, let's be really clear on it. We've done an enormous amount of work. Okay, so on just those 2 projects that we have outside the alliance, we've spent approximately $14 million on those 2 projects alone. Okay, and so that includes. So the baseline for everything is getting the historic data, understanding the projects that we've got, looking at that, going out and ground truthing it and all that kind of stuff. But then it's systematic geology, mapping, geochemistry, geophysics, scout drilling. That's, we're following the process. Initially, we had views that we would follow sort of what I'd call the junior process, where you're not cutting corners, but you're trying to do things within your budgets. But now with Newmont at the table and with our Barrick countrywide alliance, we're now doing things on a much larger, more fulsome scale to have all those tools in our toolbox to be able to identify the key spots to drill and to be able to advance that. So that's just $14 million. Other dollars that I could take around the other 28 projects in terms of the evaluation work we've done, et cetera, et cetera. So we've been very active with us in the field.
Okay, so you've spent the dollars to create projects which are interesting enough to attract some pretty big guys. Okay, Newmont, and Barrick, huge, right? Everyone knows them, but they also know them for taking bets on lots of optionality all around the world. This is not a lot of money for them. They may look at this and walk away. It's a story we hear a lot. So, it comes back to that. Do I understand what sort of company you are? And it seems to be you are a project generator. Sure, you said that earlier. Are you the team is filled with geologists? I get that. So, but have they been spending their time piecing the information which you've got from the Japanese government together to put it in a shape so that these big behemoth companies are attracted to what you've got, or have they actually been able to plow money into the ground and sort of learn something new about these properties? I mean, can you give me a sense of how that time has been spent, and more importantly, where all the money's gone?
Sure. Well, yeah. So back to that. So we've done both those things. I mean, first of all, we've analyzed all the historic data, and we've gone out and then we've collected our new data. And then we've used that data to advance projects up to drill targets. And then we've started with our scout drilling programs. And one of the important things when you see two majors like a Newmont and a Barrick being in country is that they haven't picked just one or two projects. All 30 projects in our portfolio are being advanced and evaluated now, which is quite an extraordinary number. I'd really challenge you to show me another company that has something like that has a portfolio like that that's being advanced. So the work that we've done has advanced the projects, and majors look for big things. So to give you a really good example, on just one of the projects that's in the relationship with Newmont, that one project area alone has 20 historic mines across about a 200 square kilometer area, pretty small area, 20 historic mines. We're not looking to reopen a little old gold mine. We're using those as markers to look where collections of mines may be parts of a large system. So in just one case alone, by our work, we've now identified that there are 8 mines that are in one area that is about 6.5 kilometers north to south and 4 to 5 kilometers east to west. And those mines are all part of one large system. And so we're now drilling across a portion of that to try and find, these are epithermals, so these aren't big porphyries. So we have to go now find those key feeder zones that have brought that high grade gold up to the surface or near surface. And so that's what we're doing now, is following the key trail of clues that we put together to get to the points where we're going to make discoveries out of the Hishikai mine.
Okay, because I'm hearing this. You're thinking big, great. You've attracted some big companies, great. You've got a big team of geologists who seem to have all the prerequisite tick boxes ticked. It's a big overhead for a small company. So again, a 50 million market cap, you do have to get out there and tell the story. You really do have to get out there and tell the story because it's not being valued, and you accept that. But what are you going to do with this $8.5 million now? Because you're going to have to tell people, you're going to have to explain to people, here's what I've done with $26.5 million today. I've put together this big optionality package for these majors, and with this 8.5, we're gonna up the game here. So what are you doing with it?
So let's break it down into two pieces, because I just want to go back to your comment of big overhead. And I'd like to challenge that a little bit. So when you're in the building phase, when you're moving as quickly as you can and you're ahead of competition, and it's been competitive in the more recent couple of years, others are there, people want to come in. So we've had to be very competitive, but because we've been able to navigate the permitting process, we've been able to beat out competitors. So again, putting that full group of 30 projects together. So that costs money. We're moving quickly. We're evaluating projects. We're aggressively putting in applications and again with boots on the ground as well. So that's the first part. But now we're into the next phase. And the next phase is that Barrick is sole funding the advancement of 28 projects. Okay, so sole funding the advancement of 28 projects. And so in the month following, so the Barrick Alliance was formed on February 24th of this year. Okay, just recently, Mark Bristow himself announced it at the BMO conference in Florida in front of his peers, our peers. And so it was a very gratifying day, and we were thrilled to have that happen. The month following, our overheads dropped by over 65% already in terms of our cost to operate our business. And so our focus is on the two projects that are outside the Barrick Alliance, because we're advancing those until we go to Newmont and see if they want to joint venture those projects with us. Newmont's working with us to understand more and come along with us for that journey. And so to give you a clear example, our G&A for the whole company is approximately $250,000 a month. Now, when I break that down, you've got two parts always in a public company, as everybody knows. You have the business of running the public company, and then you have the operational business of running the business. And so the $250,000, if you want to be quite specific about that, you can break that into about half and half. In terms of running a public company, costs about $100,000 a month. And the balance is focused on running two bases in Japan, an office in Tokyo, et cetera. So that's our program. We don't just have two cooks in a coffee pot. We have 18 people that we employ predominantly in Japan and a few in Vancouver that run the public company aspects.
Okay. I mean, the reason I'm asking is because, you talk about different strategies. Here, when you don't have a lot of capital available, you perhaps come at it a different way. You don't necessarily have three overhead centers. But your plan is different. What you're trying to tell the market is we couldn't have pieced together these projects, these 30 projects, in a way to attract Newmont and Barrick without spending a lot of money. Right? That's what you're saying. That's correct. That's your model. Okay, and which is fine. I just needed you to be. Get to that. Can you answer the question? What are you spending your $8.5 million on? What's that going on? Is that just G&A, or how much of that is actual drilling on the projects that you want to develop? Yeah.
So let's be precise on a couple of things. So first of all, you say $8.5 million, but $1 million was converting debt to equity, so that takes you down to $7.5 million.
Right.
And then we had also through the alliance negotiation process, I didn't want to go to the market because we were negotiating on the alliance. And in a different world, a pre-COVID world, we had a significant financing at what I think would have been far higher prices, organized with two of the major banks in Canada. Unfortunately, timing was what timing was. So February 24th, the announcement came out. In the next couple of weeks, there was all sorts of changes, et cetera, et cetera. So ultimately, we decided to go to the market, put capital together, and very clearly, the bulk of the capital that we have assembled now is to advance the two projects that are outside the alliance, because those are the ones we're funding 100%. And that's all about drilling. So as I said earlier, we've spent $14 million on those projects. We have a number of key prospects, 3 in fact that we're focused on right now. One that's already drill permitted, but with Newmont's guidance, we've done geophysics, we've done gravity, we've done CSAMT, we've just completed a major soil sampling and spectral analysis program, and I hope to have those results out very shortly. And that basically lets us zero in on the drill targets we want to drill, and so we can commence drilling. That's in the southern island of Kyushu. Up in the northern island of Hokkaido, we have 2 prospects up there. One, a historic mine, which has had unbelievably high grade and which was evaluated by Sumitomo in 1951, but hasn't had work done since then. Drill permits expected in the next few weeks there. Drill rigs, personnel. So that's our first one. And then the second one is one of those major areas where that I was describing to you before, that large area where there's 8 mines that are a collection. we're drilling across one center of that area. And so we hope to have some very well-placed holes coming up in the latter part of this year there.
Can I just ask, with the drilling that you've done today, have you had big success? Have you been encouraged by what you've seen in terms of grade? What do you know?
Yeah. So as I said, what we're looking for is low sulfidation epithermal gold veins, gold mines. And so in the area that we've done our scout drilling in Hokkaido, it's an area that's 3 kilometers wide, that at the turn of the century and up till 1943, from the western side, there was a gold rush. 10,000 people moved to that area because at surface on the top of this large hill system, there was gold. And so there was a huge facility built there. It was a 500 ton a day facility scaling up to 2,000 tons a day. 10,000 people had moved there. I mean, we're talking at surface disruption. So as a junior, one of the first things you do is you collect some data, but there's a lot of surface disturbance, so hard to see what you've got. You drill under the surface to see what's beneath that. And while we found a series of quartz veins, the gold grade wasn't high enough in those drill holes. So Newmont, who is our relationship there, they said, well, that was a good idea, but let's do it the Newmont way. Let's do geophysics across 3 kilometers. Let's do CSAMT, let's do gravity, which we did, that all of a sudden showed significant structures in the eastern portion. And then we sampled the surface and we got gold grades getting greater as we went to the east. And finally, we saw real collections, high concentrations of antimony as we went to the east, which really are a good indicator that we're getting closer to those feeder zones that have brought the gold up from deeper in the earth up to the surface. And so that's what we're permitting right now for our second phase. So the first phase, scout drilling, is an exploration tool, told us that that's not where we wanted to be, but it gave us the trail of clues now that led us to where we want to be, and that's what we're permitting right now.
Okay, brilliant. Well, I think we have got a really good taste of what you're about. I now understand what type of company you are, I believe. It'll be interesting to sort of see, obviously, over the next few months, how much promotion you do. I look forward to hearing the story in the market, get people excited about this model. It's really interesting, I think fairly unique in many ways, because the scale of what you're trying to achieve. And we'll look forward to hearing what the news from Barrick and Newmont along the way as well. So thank you very much, John. Appreciate your time today. I wish you well. Stay in touch. Pick up the phone if something interesting to say. Look forward to hearing from you.
Matthew, I will do it. Look, I appreciate you taking the time to learn about the story. It is a very unique story that is one of the only companies in the world that has the 2 top gold miners deeply embedded. It's a unique country, and we have the team, the capabilities, and the capital to advance it now. So I really look forward to keeping in touch with you.